Thank you very much. And first, please allow me to thank our colleagues at Georgetown University for inviting ROTA to share our humble experience and the number of years that we've been trying to uphold education and the need for education for all the needy and marginalized communities, and for creating and opening a platform here in Qatar, a platform of sharing knowledge, debate, and learning among various organizations. First, let me just share a simple fact about today's lecture. We try to make it a mix of many things, whether it is a little bit of, academia, a little bit of videos that we will share, a little bit of also personal stories that either me or my team have gone through. Because the topic of refugees and education in itself is so dear to us. It's the topic and it's the mission of ROTA. It's what we are being paid for to do. It's the source of income for us as families here. So please forgive me if some of the stories might sound a little bit unacademic for such a platform like this. But it's because of the human link to the topic itself that we're going to talk about. So at the beginning, let me give you a little bit of background about ROTA as an organization. So since its inception in 2005, ROTA started with a vision of providing quality education to all children and youth, to provide them with the access of education that would enable them to discover their full potential and to become the full responsible citizens that would eventually build and shape their communities and their future. With that kind of a vision in sight, we embarked into so many programs, starting from actually education in emergencies, in Pakistan, and then expanding to 13 countries around Asia. But also locally in Qatar, we have noticed that a strategic position with us would be into building the local capacity. And where could be the best investment here in Qatar is through youth and volunteerism. So even locally here in Qatar, we focused on building the youth capacity in community service, global citizenship, where we have created a lot of platforms where we can engage youth actively in these topics. And we didn't just limit it to local work. Actually, we took the youth even into international platforms as a representative of Qatar and the youth here in the region. For example, we have so far trained more than 1,017 youth in so many programs that they have engaged with us, but also 18 Qatari-based youth clubs that have started the work here with us in Qatar. Each club has its own unique vision and mission that they're working here in Qatar. International platforms that they have actively participated in were, for example, the United Nations General Assembly, the United Nations World Humanitarian Summit, where actually ROTA have hosted the global youth consultation in shaping the youth engagement in the humanitarian work, and also the Youth Compact for young people in humanitarian actions. But let me talk to you a little bit about ROTA's discourse in education in emergencies, and why did we choose education in emergencies. As you know, during emergencies, the most marginalized sector among the community are the youth and the young children. These are the most more vulnerable people during the emergency, which would hinder their access towards a safe, nurturing environment that would provide them with the quality education that would enable them to acquire lifelong skills. And we adopt a holistic approach into our projects. So we do not just come and build schools. We look into education as a holistic approach, because education is a multi-sector, multi-party, process that engages the community, the government, ministries of education, the school directorate, the parents, and even the teachers and the school administration. And also, this includes building and scaling up successful projects that are also available on the ground, but also building the infrastructure. So this is a little bit about our story as Reach Out to Asia. Now, let's talk about the topic in hand, which is the humanitarian situation. So just to take you a little bit, I have a number of basic questions that I would like to share with you. And these questions, as you can see, I mean, just thinking loudly, how many refugees do we think there are, globally? Which are the top 3 hosting countries around the world? How long does a refugee would average stay internationally? And what kind of percentage of refugees children we have? So maybe for the first questions, maybe someone can shout like a random number, like how many refugees do we think there are globally?
5 million.
5 million? Well, it's a little bit higher than that. 20, that's the number. Actually, there are 21 million, from 5 to 21 million refugees. These are, that's the number, and this gives you a sense of the scale of the issue we have in hand. And the top 3 hosting countries, where do you think they are? First, from which continent do you think it is? Maybe Europe, you think? Okay. So actually, Turkey, if we're going to say Europe, maybe, I mean, where do they stand? Actually, Pakistan and Lebanon. And you look at these countries and you would think that these are countries, we're talking about countries that are having difficulties to enroll their own children, their own population into the education system. Now, an average refugee will be in refuge for 17 years. We're talking about, that's the average. So if you are a 5-year-old kid getting into a country, they will think about you right away as the 23-year-old person who's gonna end up, in case if you will be back home. And what do you think the percentage of children among the refugees? What's that? 15? 50?
60%.
Yeah, actually it's approximately 50%. So if we're talking 21 million, it's more than 10 million children we have in refuge. And this gives you the sense of the magnitude of the problem that we have with regards to the refugees. Another thing is basically, and if you would look into the magnitude of the refugees and stateless people internationally, the figure is even grimmer than what we think. 65.3 forcibly displaced people. The 21 million we talked about are refugees. 63 includes people who are internally displaced people, which is even higher than the number who are refuging internationally. We have 21 million of refugees, as we talked. Stateless people, these are people who do not have any country or state. For example, the Rohingyas, where they do not have any country that would acknowledge, their citizens. And out of all of these huge numbers, the refugees resettled in 2015 are merely 107,000. This is a tiny fragment of the problem that we have. So the state of refugees is really high, as we can see in this. But sometimes it's very dangerous, actually, to look into numbers. When we talk about refugees, we talk about humans with ambitions, people with dreams, people who have hopes into life, and people who have the right, to fulfill their life dreams. So looking into them as numbers can actually be sometimes deceiving or misleading. So I would like to share with you a video about one person, one person out of the 63 million that we talked about, just to give more of the face to the numbers that we've looked at. It's a couple of minutes video, so it wouldn't be too long. Don't bring any popcorn, you don't need it. Please.
من حقي أن أتعلم، من حق أحس بحنان، من حقي أن تحموني لا تنسوا أني إنسان.
أنا اسمي ياسر طه، من سوريا من الشام، وأنا أعيش في لبنان حاليا في منطقة سعد نايل. كنت أشتغل مع أبي، فأمي صارت تقول لي بدي بعتك على المدرسة، إلا أنا ما بدي، بتضلني عم بشتغل وما بدي مدارس وكذا. ما كنت بعرف أنا إنه في مدرسة سورية. عم ضلوا أهلي إنه في مدرسة سوريين للسوريين. إجا أبي وأمي استفسروا هون، فلقوا إنه مدرسة حلوة ونظامها حلو، فأبي وأمي حطوني بهي المدرسة ووقفني عن الشغل. ضليت قاعد فترة منيحة بالشغل. فأبي تعب لدرجة يعني كان بده يقعد ما عاد يشتغل أبدا، تعب كتير. فاضطريت أنا أطلع معه وظلتني قاعد بالمدرسة. يعني حبيت المدرسة وما حدا أذاني وما حدا ضربني، وأنستي منيحة ومدير منيح ورفقاتي كلهم مناح طيبين وكلهم أوادم. أكثر شغلة حبيتها إنه رفقاتي ما حدا بيأذيني وما حدا بيخانقني، يعني مرتاح الحمد لله. والشغل صحيح تعب والله. ينفذ الساعة 6 الصبح عم ببكي، ما عم بيشبع نوم. عم بيجي الساعة 8 من الشغل من المخبز، عم حط راس الساعة 9، بتحمم عم فز الساعة 6 الصبح، ما عم بيشبع نوم، ما فز ببكي الصبح. شو بدي اساوي؟ ومع هيك ما بدي بطل من المدرسة أنا. اللي بيتعب أول شي شوي بعدين بيرتاح. يعني اللي بيتعب شوي وبيصبر، ويعني مثل ما بيقولوا الصبر مفتاح الفرج.
من حقي أن أتعلم، من حقي أحس بحنان، من حقي أن تحموني لا تنسوا أني إنسان، لا تنسوا أني إنسان.
So that was the story of Yasser, one of the students that's benefiting from one of our projects in Lebanon. And two things, that we can take from that video is that for this child, whose father has been working, he's been working with his father. At the beginning, he didn't want to go to school. And what was the reason behind it? He said, someone might attack me, or some people can be brutal against me. But once I went there, everybody was welcoming, and I felt, and I had friends actually. What kind of shift did that create to him actually? He started going to school, and even when his father got sick and couldn't support the family, he said, I would work and I would still go to school, And this really sends a very strong message that education and a safe place is not just a place for him to learn something, but to have a sense of normalcy in his life, to have a sense of, being a normal human being who can go and be a child again instead of being someone who's responsible, for his family, to have friends, to build self-confidence, to acquire knowledge, and to become something in the future. Now, just to talk a little bit about, going back to our topic, talking about, focusing from the international to the regional humanitarian crisis. And why do you talk about education in conflict? So just why did we focus on education and conflict? First of all, let's start with a simple fact that illiteracy is isolation. Once you are illiterate, especially in a highly intellectual world of ours as today, if you are illiterate, then you are totally isolated. And isolation is the best key to dismantle anyone's personality. Once you are isolated, you're all by yourself, and you become directly destructive, whether towards yourself internally or even towards others around you. So it's a mean to connect us as human beings, and it's a very important mean, especially in our current time and in current world. While the world is developing right now, actually there is another world that's lagging behind. Let's not forget that since World War II, the world have never witnessed the number of refugees as we are witnessing today. So the world is actually, yes, developing, but there's a huge percentage that's lagging behind. So we're actually coming to a time where there are two worlds that's going to be hugely apart from each other. And the Human Rights, and also the Human Rights Watch defines the attack on education not just as the attack on schools. It's the attack on the teacher, it's the attack on the student, it's the attack on parents and even the school infrastructure. And the treaties around the world, while it defines the human rights as a refugee, but it also leaves it for states to identify, or to interpret what would this refugee get. So even the status of a refugee is always left to the country itself, to grant them that status, leave alone, the right for education. And this is where the benefits of education that we can talk about. So this is the situation right now locally for the refugees. But what kind of benefits do we get, by educating refugees? Do we think there is something that we can gain, especially that there is a lot of amount of money that would be spent? First of all, we have to acknowledge the fact that it's our moral obligations as a human to respect and to identify and to respect the human minds through through fulfilling its desire to learn, its desire to acquire knowledge, its desire to ask questions, its desire to debate, and most importantly and ultimately to create something. This is a human need that fits each and every one, regardless of your status. Where do you come from, rich or poor? As a human, you have the right to do all of these things. And without education, this right is denied. And another benefit, of education for the refugees is actually it's a huge return of an income for the country itself. And let me put it for you in numbers. Let's say that you are hosting countries who had just a 5-year-old refugee who just came into your border. In an average, he will be back home while he's in 23. So you have two choices. Either that you will have a child, either you will have a 23-year-old man who is educated, whether he is an engineer or a doctor or a technician or someone who's capable, or you will have an illiterate person who is either recruited in the militia or even destructive in any other way. So you have these two options. So that's a fact that you are responsible to educate them. The reason why I say it's a return on income, because guess what happens after refugees come back home? It's settlement and rebuilding. So in most countries, you will be actually the donor country to help them rebuild their countries. So do you want to rebuild a country with people who are engineers, doctors, or do you want to rebuild a country where there are people who are illiterate and we'll ask you to educate them? So the benefit of education in this sense is very important, and it's very self-evident proof that we can look into. And also, reading and writing and mathematics, these are the basic life learning skills that will get those children to acquire all learning opportunities and life skills that they will get as they grow up. And according to the World Bank, in a report that was released in May 2016, education is an investment where overall another year of schooling raises earnings by 10% a year, which is typically more than any other investment you could ever made. Treasury bill by 1.4, Treasury bond by 5.3, savings accounts by 4.7, housing by 3.8, even physical assets by 7.4. So looking back, at the current refugee crisis, and just to shed a light on those countries that we talked about, specifically about the Syrian refugees. As you can see, having refugees, displaced refugees are 4,810,000. In Syria, there are 6.1 million internally displaced. These are people who are very hard, to reach and to get into. Now, looking into these countries where ROTA had an experience, to work in, Turkey has the biggest number of refugees they're hosting. Actually, 2.6 million refugees are actually right now in Turkey. In Lebanon, the refugees make 20% of the total population. So a very, it's a hugely considerable percentage of the actual, the nationals of the main fabric of the community and the country in itself is actually refugees, which would put a huge, breaking point for the country if it didn't move forward, especially with regards to education. In Jordan, 655 of the population, and in Iraq, even a country that's not even stable, there are 230,000 Iraqi refugees. So another report, from Mercy Corps, that could give you a little bit of the significance of the situation for the refugees. Starting from 2015, this is not zero. In 2030, we're starting with 3.7 million. And as you can see, month by month, the numbers skyrocketed. Now, you can see from October to January, you can see how it peaked, and I think this is in reference to the attacks on Aleppo, where the numbers really went severely up. And then, as you can see, it went until now, to 4.8. And, that was in 2016. God knows, where do we stand right now, but the numbers are really alarming. Now, what kind of an approach, did we choose to take as Reach Out to Asia with this situation? So basically, as the schools in those countries are really severely, in a severe need for support from all the kind of elements that I talked about, whether it is infrastructure, teacher capacity, materials, and other things, non-formal education, was our basic approach for, addressing this issue. Why is that? Because basically, for cases such as the Syrian refugees, alternative solutions to education emergencies are for the most suitable options, and substantial proportions for refugees remain out of school and the formal education system. We're talking about schools that even works on double shifts. They couldn't even maintain or meet the need for the students. Another element is that non-formal education can work as an accelerator, for those children who wouldn't even make it, for the formal education, but would provide them with the basic learning needs that would acquire them to meet and to go back to the mainstream of the education system. And the right for education for all the children and young people under 18 years is also enshrined in the numbers of international conventions, and international conventions too, and stipulated in the Millennium Development Goals and the Education for All targets. Yet, and very notably, The secondary formal and non-formal education is being missed, especially for the youth. So you will see a focus on primary education, but once you come to the age of young adolescence, this is a gap where almost very little is being done. Another thing is also when formal education is falling, to meet the needs of those Syrian children, the non-formal education system may be able to provide the support system and also the positive environment. As we talked before, education in this case goes beyond just the book and the teacher and the homework. It goes to the building self-esteem. It talks about self-confidence, having normalcy in life, and so many other things that also psychosocial support that would help them to become the responsible adults that they hope to become. And also what we're witnessing right now in the world is also a shift in the global agenda for international humanitarian work and development. In 2000, the world was very ambitious and came up with the Millennium Development Goals. These are the Millennium Development Goals that was announced in September 2000 by leaders of 189 countries who have gathered in the United Nations and have approved an 8 Millennium Development Goals that they have held themselves responsible to meet. 15 years have passed because that was the expiry date, and a good progress was achieved in a number of those Millennium Development Goals. But now the shift is called the Sustainable Development Goals. And out of the word, the key word here is sustainable. There is a big lesson learned from the international community, is that giving is not enough. That we have to give, but we also have to build. And by build, I mean local capacity. Because what we have witnessed in whole international donor forums, donor fatigue is there. It's big, it's very obvious, and all donors are saying that we might be putting a small bandage in a huge wound. Why is that? Because we keep on pouring and people ask for more. We keep on pouring and, schools are being destroyed. Teachers are being executed. Children are being used as labor soldiers and many other things. So what's the difference between the Millennium Development Goals and the Sustainable Development Goals? Millennium Development Goals were targeting to meet halfway through. So if we were to say we want to, for example, child mortality, they were hoping that they would reach a good percentage. But now with the Sustainable Development Goals, the target is to reach 0, for example. And that goes with all other development goals. From some countries to all countries. The focus at the beginning was for the most needy and the poorest countries. Now there's an understanding that everyone has to be included so that we would achieve those targets. From top down, donor to beneficiary, now to bottom up. And that reflects also to the point of developing capacity. There's an understanding that, it's never gonna work if you're gonna feed someone from the top and ask them, and they will come back and ask for more. You have to teach them to build their capacity, to build their systems, governance, and so many things that comes from that. The 8 million, and also from partial solution to total solutions. There were 8 Millennium Development Goals. However, the current draft of the Sustainable Development Goals suggests 17 focus areas that goes even beyond the sectors and goes to the symptoms, to issues such as peace, stability, human rights, and even good governance. And this is where quality education and the Millennium Development Goals focuses on the from quantity in the Millennium Development Goals. Now we're going towards quality. And because what was witnessed during the Sustainable Development Goals, that you can get lots of children back in school, but they don't end up learning. You'll end up with numbers, but not with humans who are actually educated. So And that moves me to my point, to the next point, which is about ROTA's holistic approach into tackling education in emergencies. So we start basically by strategic partnerships. ROTA is a partnership-led initiative. So we raise funds, but we don't actually have offices in the countries we work in. We have partners. Why is that? Because we do believe that there's no one solution that can fit all, and there's no one organization that can fix all the solutions. There are so many organizations, and each one comes with their own competitive edge and their good capacities that we can tap into, and together we can do something. There's also mobilizing resources, you know. There's also being a member here at a local, national consortium that was announced last year, which was called QUEST, which is Qatar Upholding the Education for the Syrians Trust. So QUEST is actually a national consortium that brings a number of NGOs here in Qatar. It is Reach Out to Asia, Education Above All, RAF, Qatar Charity, and Salatic. And this initiative is just focusing on providing education for the Syrian refugees. Also, our focus on sustainability. And when our sustainability, we talk about two areas by building two capacities. Number one, the capacity of the community as a whole. And by that, we're talking about the school administrations, the teachers on, for example, pedagogical skills, parents, and parents to become education facilitators. But also we're talking about another area of building capacity, which is the local partners. There are local NGOs who can be very much an active partner once they are being invested in. There are big NGOs like international NGOs, but sometimes they don't last there. And if you want to look for sustainability, you have to look into the local. Which takes me to one point that reflects on today's work, which is, yes, we can focus on non-formal education, but also into building local capacity, we have to talk about advocacy. And in advocacy, there's a dilemma that we face, which is, what about accreditation? Non-formal education can be a very effective tool and it brings a lot of benefit, but there are countries, and in most cases, it will not be accredited. Which takes me to my next point, which is, sorry. Okay. Next. See, it's not me, it's them. Yeah, the one after that. Again. Okay, so in so many videos that we have seen, you know, about refugees and lots of information about the refugees, lots of Syrian refugees were asked, you know, what was the first thing, you know, you got and you rushed at home when bombing was happening, where militia or military forces were coming to your home? And the number one, they said, it wasn't a passport, you know, it wasn't, you know, like the gold or maybe a little bit of money that they have. It was their certificates. And really, you know, for some of us would say, yes, okay, certificates are important, you know, and people might need it, you know. But let me tell you something that really have personally touched me. As what you can see in this picture, you know, it's not a building of one of the United Nations or because of the white and blue or something. This is actually my home, my house. I just moved in last week, you know. But some of you might ask, like, what does his house have to do with refugee certification? But bear patient with me. So I was moving to my house last week, okay? And in Qatar, it's very normal, for lots of families that you would actually live with your parents, even if you get married and have children. So I have been blessed to have 2 kids, and and I built my house, and next to my house is also my mother's house, and it was my time to move on. So as I was packing my stuff, and we're ready to move, my mom came to me and she said, I opened one of those old boxes, and there's something I found for you. And here's something that she gave to me. And the thing she gave to me was actually, this is a certificate. This is actually a certificate of me when I was at 1st grade. So she kept it hidden, and it says, the school of Al-Qura gives Isa the certificate of being the ideal student. I don't know what it used to mean. I wasn't a 1st grader, I have to admit it, but I didn't have like the highest grades. But there is something to say that Isa behaved during this time. So as I picked up this certificate, then I was like, okay, then it's time to move on and pick up the other stuff. And then it came to my mind, like, oh, speaking of certificates, how about my bachelor's degree or my master's degree or all the certificates I got from all the special trainings I've been to? And then I remembered, yeah, maybe it's in that corner under that box. So I was moving stuff, and then I went to that corner, and I found the box, and I opened the box, and there wasn't any certificates. I was like, okay, maybe it's in here. And I started looking, and then paranoia came in. And then for a split of a second, I personally felt invalid. I felt uncredited. I felt, it came to me as I had no value, as if I have never existed. It might sound a little bit, it doesn't make any sense. It's just a bunch of papers, and when paranoia hits you, you really try to think like, what am I going to do with my life, or if I will apply somewhere, are they going to accept me? And you have to understand, I was moving from one house to one house. I was picking up my stuff from one home to another. I wasn't bombed. Our community wasn't raided. I was moving from 2 houses that are maybe like 5 kilometers away from where I'm living right now. But in this split of a second, paranoia hit me, and I felt like I didn't even exist, And it really links me to what was these refugees talking about, which was, I ran for my certificate. Because it really gives you this validation that you have actually lived, that you have acquired something. And this something, really gives you credit that you are worth of something and you can accomplish something. And this is the ultimate, goal for humans, is to feel of an added value that you can contribute to something. And this is where I talk about, the importance of accreditation. And why are we advocating for that? Is that those people, once they are even in refuge, they have to acknowledge, and the countries, if they will provide them with education, they have to acknowledge their existence. There are also other areas that we advocate for, as a non-traditional donor, for example. We look into a shift for, to creating a paradigm of shift in the sector that we work in. By engaging, for example, the private sector here in Qatar. In our community service programs, we have partners such as construction companies, IKEA, The One, who would engage with us in a home renovation, for families here in need in Qatar. We're also non-conventional in an approach in our fundraising that we also hold a biennial gala dinner, that would bring royal family members, corporate CEOs, international organizations, celebrities, where we would even do an auction that we would raise money, for our projects. And that auction will bring even artists, you name it, Richard Sierra, Damien Hirst, local partners, and many others. But it's not just an event of celebration. It's a movement of bringing all of people together, to share their passion, to raise their funds, but also to learn about our journey as an advocate for education. Also, we have an event during Ramadan, which is a special feast for ladies, where we'll bring all the ladies here in Qatar from different sectors to celebrate this holy month of Ramadan, but also, to learn about our stories. Privacy for ladies here is of an importance. And it's very important for us to tap into that demography of the community and to see how they can contribute. And they've been contributing very generously. So I will end up, my speech for now, because I think I've passed my 30 minutes with a couple of minutes. But let me conclude, my talk today with a few points, that I'd like to share with you. Number one is, despite all of the gains in the area of access to education, more effective partnerships among all of us is very important. And I'm speaking to you, academic people, because research is a must for us in this sector. Researchers can provide us with a lot of information that would enable us to become proactive with our approach, who would bring to us evidence that our work sometimes works, sometimes it doesn't, but it reinforces our debate to prove our case as educators that education is a must. Also, we're looking for forward-looking data, data that would provide us with a good analysis of current situations, that would provide us with a good planning that we can do for our programs and for the future. Aligning research and in the education agenda. Us as educators, especially in that field, have faced a lot of challenges into proving our case. And I can share one picture with you, and this is, I promised you, my last slide. You look at those children's, in those pictures, and maybe some of you can tell me, for example, what kind of needs do you see, with these children? For example, this child, in the corner, what do you think he needs? Or what do you think the problem there? Healthcare, that's right. The one there in the corner? Exactly, we're talking about labor children. The one there in the corner? Water. And this one here? Shelter. But my question to you, who do you think out of these children is uneducated? We cannot tell, because education is intangible. And this is our challenge, for educators. For you to prove your case as in education, people cannot see it. They see the need for health. They see the need for water. You can put it in a brochure. But once we go and talk about teacher capacity building training, once we talk about, sport programs, once we talk about, ICT for education, these are things that people find it a little bit hard to grasp. And I don't blame them. I think the responsibility is on all of us, to make our case and to present the need, because guess what? Out of all the international aid that goes for emergency, 1.4% just goes for education and emergency. And this is really shameful, if we're talking about the current world that we live in today, because education is a must, and education must be upheld as the first priority. So I hope that you found my session a little bit maybe informative. I hope that I have, pulled some strings into your mind, few things that might last in your mind for a while to think about. And I'm really pleased and honored to be here with your presence. And thanks very much to our colleagues in Georgetown for providing us with this opportunity to be here. Thank you very much.